Welcome to the Explainer. Let's be honest for a second. If you've ever opened up a blank Excel spreadsheet and felt this sudden, overwhelming wave of panic, you are absolutely not alone. Seriously, all those empty little cells can look like this endless, complicated grid of demands. But today, we're going to look at this entirely differently and completely flip our perspective on spreadsheets. We are officially stepping out of the stuffy office and into the empowering, highly organized world of a digital kitchen. Okay, let's dive into this. Imagine for a moment that Excel isn't some stressful math test. Instead, it's just a giant, brilliantly organized commercial kitchen. And the best part? You're the head chef. In this digital kitchen, your raw data, the numbers, the names, the dates you type in, those are simply your ingredients. And the formulas and functions we're going to explore today, well, those are your prep tools, your ovens, and your blenders. When you start thinking of data as ingredients just waiting to be prepared, the entire program suddenly makes perfect, intuitive sense. All right, let's get started with Section 1, Sorting Your Ingredients, Data Types. So before we even think about turning on the stove, we've got to look in the pantry to see exactly what we're working with. Why? Because Excel handles different types of ingredients in completely different ways. This is our foundational pantry checklist. In Excel, you've got numbers, text, dates, time, currency, percentages, and logical values, which are basically just true or false. Now, making this distinction is absolutely crucial. Think about it. You would never try to bake a cake using a cup of salt instead of a cup of sugar, right? Well, in Excel, you literally cannot do math with text. If you type a number in a way that accidentally tricks Excel into thinking it's text, your recipe, your formula, is going to completely fail. Getting this right from the start guarantees you're using the correct ingredient for the exact right recipe. Moving right along to Section 2, Plating and Presentation, Number Formatting. Once we have our ingredients pulled together, we have to plate them. And this brilliantly illustrates one of the absolute most powerful concepts in all of Excel, the big difference between an actual value and a displayed value. Just look at the left side here. We have the raw ingredient, a 1 followed by 6 zeros. Kind of hard to read at a glance, right? But over on the right, we've applied 1,000 separator formatting to display 1 million with nice, neat commas. The underlying ingredient hasn't changed one bit. Excel still sees a raw 1 million for all its calculations. But the plating, the formatting, well, it makes it infinitely easier for the human eye to digest. Here we can see exactly how this plating works across a bunch of different styles. Say you input 0.25 and then tell Excel to plate it as a percentage. Boom, it displays as 25%. You input 0.5, plate it as a fraction, and you get 1/2, which is super useful for engineering or manufacturing data. Input 1250.75, apply currency formatting, and you've got a beautiful $1250.75. But hey, here's a wild quirk you definitely need to watch out for. If you type 1.5 into a cell and then click that percentage button thinking you'll get 15%, Excel actually multiplies by 100 to format percentages, so you're actually going to end up with 150%. The takeaway? Always mind how you plate your raw numbers. And then we have this intimidating little plate. If you've ever typed a really large number and suddenly saw something crazy like 2.5e plus 07 pop up, you probably thought you broke the kitchen. Seriously, don't panic. This is just scientific notation. It's a highly specialized plating style mostly used for scientific and research data. It's simply Excel's way of writing 25 million without taking up way too much space on the plate. It's not an error at all. It's just pure efficiency. But what happens when ingredients do actually spoil? Because sometimes numbers act really funny when they're accidentally stored as text. To troubleshoot this spoiled data, the very first thing you do is look for a tiny green triangle in the top left corner of the cell. That's basically Excel waving a red flag at you. Next, check for a leading apostrophe right before your number. That is a super common culprit that forces text formatting. Also, check for extra invisible spaces. These sneaky little errors trick Excel into locking up your numbers so you literally can't cook with them. Spotting them early is the real secret to keeping your kitchen running smoothly. Let's jump into Section 3, Slicing and Dicing, Text Formulas. Now it's time for the actual prep work. Text formulas map so perfectly to physical kitchen actions, it's crazy. Got data with a bunch of messy, accidental spaces? Use the trim function to literally trim the fat and clean up those edges. What if you need to combine a first name and a last name from two completely different columns? Just use concat. It acts exactly like a blender, seamlessly mixing multiple text strings into one smooth output. Or maybe you just need the first 3 digits of a phone number. Use the left or right functions to slice off exactly the characters you need from the edges of your data. And it is truly amazing how much control these prep tools give you over messy raw data. If you need your presentation to be totally uniform, use the proper function. It instantly capitalizes the first letter of every word, turning a messy, lowercase John Doe into a formal, perfectly plated John Doe. And if you happen to find a bad ingredient in your dataset, you don't have to throw the whole thing out. Functions like replace and substitute let you swap out specific text strings for new ones on the fly. You are in complete, absolute command of how your ingredients are prepped. Which brings us to Section 4, Cooking and Timing, Math and Dates. With all the prep done, it's finally time to turn on the stove. Cooking in Excel happens through basic mathematical operations. This is where your ingredients actually combine to create something entirely new. You just use standard operators like a plus sign for addition, an asterisk for multiplication, or a forward slash for division. By typing an equals sign followed by something like A2 plus B2 or maybe 3 with a caret for an exponent of 5, you are telling Excel to fire up the stove and combine those raw values into a finished calculation. It is the most fundamental cooking technique in the entire software. So the crucial point here is that a dynamic kitchen absolutely needs a dynamic clock, and Excel has some incredible tools for tracking time. If you use the today function, just the word today followed by empty parentheses, Excel will always return the current date. But if you need down-to-the-minute precision, the now function gives you the current date and the exact time. You can also manually construct specific moments using the date and time functions, but honestly, the coolest part is that these aren't just static text labels. Excel understands these as actual units of time flowing forward, which means you can literally do math with them. Now, what's really fascinating about this is how we can put that date math to work using the year frac function. Year frac calculates the exact fraction of a year between two specific dates. Why does this matter to us? Well, think about this. If you use your birth date as the first input and that dynamic today function we just talked about as the second input, Excel will calculate your exact age, down to the decimal, right at this very second. And because of how the today function works, that number is going to dynamically update every single time you open the spreadsheet. How cool is that? We have officially stocked the pantry, prepped our text, plated our numbers, and mastered the kitchen clock. You're no longer just staring at a scary blank grid. You are standing in a fully equipped digital kitchen, and you are the head chef. By mastering these basics, you gain total, unwavering control over your raw information. And here's a thought I want to leave you with. When you learn how to elegantly organize and command your data, you ultimately learn how to organize your own mind. So now that you know the recipe, what masterpiece are you going to build next?